You're in the trunk of a car, it's dark. The air is running out. A Soviet border guard just opened the trunk and his hand is 6 inches from the hidden compartment where you're hiding. 3 years ago, you were the most powerful KGB officer in London, officially responsible for Soviet intelligence operations across the entire United Kingdom. The KGB had absolutely no idea they'd promoted Britain's best spy to run their own service. This is exactly what happened between those two moments. And it happened twice. You are 24 years old, KGB officer, third-generation intelligence. Your father was NKVD. Your brother Vasily is KGB. This is the family business, not a choice, not an ambition, just the water you swim in. It's 1962. You're stationed in Berlin, then Copenhagen, recruiting Scandinavian citizens to spy for the Soviet Union. You're good at it, methodical, patient. You understand people, but Copenhagen is different from Moscow. Here, people criticize their government in public and nothing happens to them. Newspapers print things the state doesn't like. Nobody disappears. You file that away. The KGB in 1962 is not what most people imagine. It's not a room full of villains twirling mustaches. It's a bureaucracy, enormous, paranoid, and deeply convinced that the West is planning a first strike against the Soviet Union at any moment. Every cable, every report, every intelligence assessment feeds the same conclusion. The Americans are coming. The question is when? You operate inside this machine. You recruit assets. You write reports. You attend meetings where everyone agrees with everyone else because disagreeing is a career-ending move. And sometimes worse, you're good at the job. You're promoted. You're trusted. But here's what nobody tells you about being trusted inside a system built on lies. The closer you get to the center, the more clearly you can see what the center actually. It's 1968. You're back in Copenhagen for your second posting. You have a wife, a career, and a copy of Solzhenitsyn hidden in your apartment, not because you have to, because you want to. Then August happens. Soviet tanks roll into Prague. The Czechoslovak government had been experimenting with something called socialism with a human face, slightly more press freedom, slightly less state terror. The Kremlin calls it a threat to the socialist bloc. The solution is 200,000 troops and 2,000 tanks. The Soviet news calls it fraternal assistance. The Western news calls it an invasion. You watch it on television in Copenhagen, you know which one is true, you don't say anything, you go to work the next day, you write your reports, you recruit your assets, but something has shifted. The machine you work for just showed you exactly what it is, and you can't unsee it. What you don't know yet is that a British intelligence officer in Copenhagen has been watching you, watching how you react to the news, watching what you read, watching who you talk to. He's been watching you for months, and he's about to introduce himself. His name is Richard Bromhead, MI6. He approaches you at a diplomatic function in Copenhagen in 1974. He doesn't ask you to betray your country, not yet. He just talks about Prague, about what you think, about what you've seen. You're trained to spot recruitment attempts. You've run dozens of them yourself. You know exactly what this is. You don't walk away. Bromhead doesn't push. He doesn't offer money. He doesn't threaten. He just waits. And in that silence, you think about Prague, the tanks, the students, the lies in the cables you've sent to Moscow, every person you've recruited for a system you no longer believe in, every report you've written that fed the machine. You think about what the alternative looks like. It looks like tanks in the streets. You agree to help, not for money, not for ideology in the Western sense, for something simpler and more dangerous, because you've seen what the system does when it feels threatened, and you've decided you're more afraid of that than of what happens if you get caught. You become Sunbeam, Britain's spy inside the KGB. The KGB, naturally, has absolutely no idea. The mechanics of being a double agent inside the KGB are not glamorous. There are no car chases, no gadgets, no dramatic confrontations in dark alleys. There are dead drops, specific locations in Copenhagen, then London, then Moscow. A chalk mark on a wall means a package has been left. A specific route on your morning jog means you have something urgent. You memorize the signals. You memorize the counter-surveillance patterns. You memorize which colleagues are watching you and which ones aren't. You pass intelligence to MI6 for years, quietly, methodically, the same way you do everything. And then in 1982, something changes. You're posted to London not as a mid-level officer, as the KGB resident, the head of all Soviet intelligence operations in the United Kingdom. Let that land for a second. The man now officially responsible for running Soviet spies against Britain is Britain's spy inside the Soviet Union. MI6 cannot believe their luck. They also cannot tell anyone, not the Americans, not their own government, not yet, because the more people who know, the more chances there are for a leak, and a leak means your death. You now have access to everything, every KGB operation in Britain, every Soviet asset, every intelligence priority, every cable between London and Moscow. You pass it all to MI6. And then in November 1983, you read something that makes your blood run cold. If you're still with me, make sure you're subscribed. Because what comes next is the part that almost ended everything, and it's the part that almost nobody knows about. The cable is from Moscow Center. It's about a NATO military exercise called Able Archer 83. The exercise is designed to simulate a nuclear war, command procedures, communication protocols, the full sequence of events leading to a nuclear launch. It's a training exercise. The Americans and British know it's a training exercise. The Soviets do not know it's a training exercise. Moscow Center has been running an operation called Ryan for 2 years, a massive intelligence effort to detect signs of an imminent American nuclear first strike. They're watching everything, every unusual military movement, every change in communication patterns, every sign that the West is preparing to attack. Able Archer. 83 looks to Soviet intelligence exactly like the real thing. You read the cables, Soviet nuclear forces are going on alert, bombers are being fueled, submarines are moving into launch positions. The Soviets are not preparing to respond to an attack, they're preparing to launch first, before what they believe is an inevitable American strike. The world is closer to nuclear war than at any point since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you are the only person in a position to stop it. You pass the intelligence to MI6. MI6 passes it to the British government. The British government calls Washington. Reagan reads the assessment. He is, by multiple accounts, genuinely shaken. He didn't know the Soviets were this afraid. He didn't know Able Archer looked like a real attack from the other side. The exercise is quietly modified, signals are sent to reassure Moscow. The alert level drops, the crisis passes. Nobody outside a very small circle of intelligence officials ever knows how close it was. You go back to work on Monday morning, it's May 1985. You're back in Moscow, you've been recalled, officially for consultations. You don't know why yet, then the meetings start. 3 KGB officers, a conference room, questions that start general and get specific very fast. Where were you on this date? Who did you meet with? Can you explain this discrepancy in your expense report? You answer everything calmly. You've been trained for this. You've run interrogations yourself. You know the techniques, but you also know what this means. Someone talked. They don't arrest you, not yet. They're building a case. They want more. You're placed under surveillance. 24 hours, teams rotating. You can feel them. You have one signal left, one chance to tell MI6 you're burned. You go for a jog. You carry the Safeway bag. It's a British supermarket bag, the kind you'd pick up in London. In Moscow, it's a signal. It means, I'm compromised, execute the extraction plan. You run your route. A British diplomatic car drives past, slows slightly, continues. They've seen you. Now you wait. The extraction plan is called Operation Pimlico. A British diplomatic convoy will drive from Moscow to the Finnish border, 1,000 miles through Soviet territory. You'll hide in the trunk of one of the cars. The convoy has diplomatic immunity. The cars cannot be searched, except they can be searched. Diplomatic immunity is a legal concept. Border guards with orders are a physical reality. The convoy leaves Moscow on July 19, 1985. You're in the trunk, it's dark, the air is stale, you can taste metal. You've been given a drug to suppress your scent. MI6 is worried about dogs. The drug makes you nauseous. You drive for hours. The first checkpoint, the car stops. You hear voices. Russian, official. The trunk opens. A guard's hand moves toward the compartment. His fingers are 6 inches from the latch. You haven't breathed in 30 seconds. The hand stops. VCV Poryadke, everything is in order. The trunk closes. You breathe. 1 checkpoint down, 11 to go. You cross into Finland on July 19th, 1985. You've been a KGB officer for 25 years, a British intelligence asset for 11 of them. You've passed intelligence that identified more than 300 Soviet agents operating in Western countries. You've prevented a nuclear war twice by most assessments, once during Able Archer, once earlier by providing intelligence that allowed Western governments to understand Soviet intentions during the most dangerous years of the Cold War. You live in Britain now, you've written books, you've testified before Parliament, you've been awarded the Companion of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George. You are technically still sentenced to death in Russia. The sentence has never been carried out. It has also never been rescinded. Your wife and 2 daughters were not extracted with you. They remained in Moscow. The KGB used them as leverage for years. They were eventually allowed to leave the Soviet Union in 1991, 6 years after your escape. Your marriage did not survive. The 300 agents you identified were quietly removed from operations. Some were arrested, some were expelled, some simply disappeared from the intelligence landscape without explanation. The world never found out about Able Archer. Not the full story, not what the cables actually said, not how close it was. Most people alive today have never heard your name. Every person alive today owes you a debt they'll never know they have. You started in a KGB office in Copenhagen believing in a system your family had served for 3 generations. You ended in a trunk, crossing into Finland with nothing but your life and a Safeway bag. 1 person, 1 decision. Made in silence, in a Copenhagen apartment watching tanks roll through Prague on a black and white television. Was it worth it? Subscribe. Next week, we cover the man who made the opposite choice, a CIA officer who sold his country's secrets to Moscow for 9 years, got 300 people killed, and almost destroyed Western intelligence from the inside. And nobody suspected him, because he was the one running the investigation.